I'm going to introduce myself in my language, which is Cree. Tanse, that means hello. Nasikasun Jackie Bellerose. My name is Jackie Bellerose. I'm the Indigenous Engagement and Recruitment Specialist for the Faculty of Arts. Currently, there's over 1,800 Indigenous learners at the University of Alberta on all of our campuses, and over 300 of those are in the Faculty of Arts. This is a really important question because I feel like there are a lot of issues that are invisible to people who are new to the country. So Indigenous people have faced numerous challenges being in Canada. So we have faced genocide, colonialism, and residential schools, the 60s scoop. These are historically acts of violence against us in the past 150 years, right? So when you see an Indigenous student walking around campus, you have to remember that they have that legacy behind them. They're carrying that. And we are walking around on lands that have been taken from us, and we are trying to reconcile that fact in our minds and in our actions with Canada. So you're, as an Indigenous student walking around campus, you're carrying around all of this stuff with you. The residential schools and settler colonialism and the 60s scoop, all of that, we have this legacy of children being taken away from their families and then being put back with their families, and there's this big disconnection. So a lot of our, not only ourselves, but our parents and our grandparents suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, mental health struggles, depression, anxiety, and addiction issues. We're carrying all of that with us now. We're on a healing journey. We've been trying to heal from all of this stuff for at least, when did the last residential school close? In the 1990s. So we've been trying to heal from these things for 30, 40, 50 years now. And it's a work in progress. And part of that journey is post-secondary higher education. The main thing I feel like is very important that people know when they're coming to this country, that the Indigenous people have been through it. Not only did we inherit trauma, we inherited resiliency. So we're here, we're still here, we're strong, and we're trying to persevere. There's also just the daily regular racism and discrimination that Indigenous people face in general, not necessarily at the university. The university has been a very welcome and open place, definitely adapting and changing and welcoming for Indigenous students and learners. Another thing, I guess, is a lot of students come from isolated communities, and this would be their first time in the city, or their first time, not living here. They would have visited maybe or came once or twice before, but not always. And so here they are from high school coming into this big city. Not only is it the big city, but the campus itself is just overwhelming because you're coming from a community of 500 to 1,000 people. And now you're right in the middle of a 40,000 person campus. So there's like the feeling of isolation and loneliness. The other challenges they face are kind of the same challenges every student faces, right? Like finances and getting good marks and, needing people to talk to, or people like just academic struggles, as well as the rest of the population of students. An important takeaway for international students is that they're not our issues. They're issues that have developed because Canada has assumed sovereignty over these lands, right? And that's kind of where we stand still today. And we've only been really revitalizing this ideology over the past, I guess, since the 70s, I would say. We've become more aware of our sovereignty and willing to assert our rights in these ways. So I feel like that's an important takeaway for international students, is to see what they're walking into. We are consistently battling politically, in the courts, in legislation. It's a continuous, ongoing fight. It's not um, as peaceful or as reconciled as some would want you to believe. When Canada fails to uphold their end of the treaty negotiations and their treaty provisions, we've upheld our end by allowing everybody to live on the lands, right? That was kind of like what we said in the treaties. It's like, okay, you can come and live here as long as there's these things met. And there's always been historically, for the past 200 years, displacement and dispossession of Métis people across Canada. And also, I have to mention the Inuit. It's actually a continued colonization of the North today. That's not even done yet. You know, there is colonization happening right now. In the Northwest Territories, Nunavut, the Yukon, it's still happening currently. And I feel like it's really important that international students learn that history. As a settler, you have to realize that you are a settler and that you are coming onto lands that are still being contested as, like, we don't feel like we own the land. We've never felt like we don't own the land. We share the land. Like, all we want is the shared side to be upheld. Like, the promises you made for us to share the land, uphold those. Not only sharing of land, sharing of resources, that's a big one. And not raping the land and the resources, or polluting the land and the resources. And those kinds of things are really important to us. And water, like keeping the water clean, keeping the lands clean, and just trying to maintain the Mother Earth in her, and in the best way that she provides for us unconditionally. We need to take care of her type of mindset. We belong to her. She made us, like, we need to protect her. She's been protecting us for generations and generations, providing for us for generations and generations. We need to take care of her. And that's the bottom line, I guess, for being a settler coming here. Please just respect that and acknowledge that, and help us anyway, be an ally. There is actually a really good course that's offered through the Faculty of Native Studies. It's called Indigenous Canada, and it's 100% free. And also, if you're taking a degree program, you can always take a Native Studies course. There are definitely some overview courses that you could take as well, that are the history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and Indigenous peoples throughout history. There's like more in-depth ones, and there's more broad range ones. There's a couple of things that I would recommend and that I could just talk about. So we have our round dance that's usually in January at the Van Vliet Center at the Butterdome. There's also numerous round dances around Edmonton all winter. Round dances are usually meant for the winter, and then powwows in the summer. So these are events that we expect anybody to show up and enjoy. The other thing, there is downtown, there is an Indigenous artisan market. Visit the vendors there, and you could always ask them questions about anything that they've made, right? Because that they're willing to share that, and that's a really nice way to learn. There is the Indigenous experience at Fort Edmonton that I recommend as well as the Royal Alberta Museum has a really great Indigenous showcase throughout the whole. So it's not just Indigenous in a corner, it's literally Indigenous sprinkled throughout because that's where we are and how we have been throughout this development of what people call Canada and Alberta, right? It's always been my intention to try to get Indigenous students with together with international students. So we should try to start some kind of we call them tea and bannock, where you like make some tea, make some bannock, have a little bit of food, like a social gathering where people can just mingle and meet each other. I think maybe we should start really looking towards building that relationship on campus because we want people to know who we are, especially when they're new to our country.